And like the Minister, I also would like to thank Deputy Daly for, and her colleagues indeed, for the work and the effort that they put in order to ensure that this issue hasn't in fact lost any focus. And I know how difficult it can be to put together a piece of legislation like this. The Government shares the concerns expressed by Deputy Daly and our private members' bill that pregnant women whose life is at risk can access appropriate medical care, including lawful termination of pregnancy. As this House heard last week, the Government is committed to ensuring that the safety of pregnant women in Ireland is maintained and strengthened, and that we can fulfil our duty of care towards them. The Government's commitment to this issue is clear and is reflected in the agreed programme for Government, which committed to establishing an expert group to examine these issues and to make recommendations to Government on how this matter should be properly addressed. The expert group report was published today, which I welcome, and it can be found on the Department of Health's website and will be debated in this House next week. I would urge all members of this House to read the findings of the expert group's report, and I believe that all of us here present should be afforded the opportunity to study that report in detail before being called upon to vote on any legislative proposals on the matter. There will be no guillotine for the Dáil debate. Every member will get an opportunity to add to the discussion. The Joint Oireachtas Committee on Health and Children will also hold 3 days of public hearings on the report in the new year prior to the Dáil resuming. I do not believe that today, on the day the expert group's report has been published, that it is appropriate to be considering voting on what is effectively an attempt to prejudge its recommendations. As I said last week during the debate on the Sinn Féin motion on the Supreme Court ruling on the X case, we now know that there is a solution in sight and that action will be taken. The expert group report, which we now all have at our disposal, is a very detailed and comprehensive report. It provides a very interesting background information on the topic of termination of pregnancy in Ireland. It lays out with stark clarity the current legal provisions governing termination of pregnancy in Ireland and sets out 4 options for the implementation of the European Court of Human Rights judgment in the AB and C versus Ireland case. The report provides a very clear analysis of the legal, constitutional, ethical and medical issues to be considered. It also lays out in a simple and concise fashion the advantages and disadvantages of each option available to us for the implementation of the judgment of the European Court of Human Rights in AB and C versus Ireland. Most importantly, the report is clear in my view that the option of legislation with regulations will satisfy the requirement of the implementation process of the judgment of the European Court of Human Rights. In my reading of the report, we now have a clear roadmap for action. As has been stated in this House recently by both the Taoiseach and the Minister for Health, this issue has been with us for over 20 years, and this is the first government that has decided we are going to deal with it. 6 governments in this state have failed to act on the Supreme Court judgment of 1992, and this government will not be the 7th. However, legislating for the X case is a serious and legal complex issue. As such, every comma, full stop, will be subject to intense scrutiny and may be subject to a challenge in the courts. I think we've all been there and we know that that's a fact. Legislation in this area requires the most careful and expert drafting. The most appropriate place to do this is in the Office of the Attorney-General. While Deputy Daly's bill is welcome in facilitating debate, it is not appropriate that it forms the legislative basis for this particular complex area. Indeed, the expert group report pointed out that due to the nature of this legislation, the process of drafting and democratic scrutiny is likely to take a considerable period of time. This is a sensitive issue and it is proper and right that it be given the attention it requires. Therefore, I support the Government's decision to oppose Deputy Daly's bill. While the expert group report sets out a number of recommendations, it sets these out by weighing the advantages and disadvantages of each option. The report's findings, in my reading, state that the recommendation for legislation with regulation would likely satisfy the requirements of the implementation process of the judgment in the AB and C versus Ireland case. According to the report, legislation with regulations fulfils the requirement of the judgment. It provides for appropriate checks and balances between the powers of legislature and executive, and would be amenable to changes that might arise out of clinical practice or indeed scientific advances. It is important to point out that the Oireachtas will have the opportunity to discuss and vote on all the relevant details of any proposed legislation in the area. I hope that the Government will be supported by the opposition, especially those who have been so clear in their desire for action in relation to this issue. While the Government is committed to acting on this report, with a decision to be made before the Dáil recess and a hope to implement the decision in the new year, it is clear that any proposed legislation for the X case will be a complex task. The expert group is helpful in that it discusses the various complex issues that can arise and sets out a number of measures that could be implemented to address each issue. For example, the report states that the Supreme Court in the X case specifically recognised risk of suicide as a legitimate basis for permitting termination of pregnancy, where the other criteria were satisfied. This principle was upheld in 2 subsequent referendums on the issue. However, it goes on to deal with and reject the arguments often put forward that the judgment in Attorney General versus X establishes a right to the abortion at any gestational age. Even from a cursory analysis, it is clear that the report of the expert group provides a wealth of expertise, both medical and legal, and that this considerable resource is now at our disposal and should not be ignored. Finally, it must be stated that our responsibility as legislators is not simply to draft legislation, no matter how well intended. It is our responsibility to pass legislation so that it gets onto the statute books. To do that, legislation must gather 83 votes in the House. We should remind ourselves that last April, when Deputy Daly's bill, and I spoke on that bill as well, and no doubt it was well intentioned, gathered 20 votes. That really tells us that there is division amongst all groups in this House and different opinions in relation to this particular issue. Well, it is. There's a different opinion in Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, and indeed in the technical group. And Sinn Féin has a different view on certain issues. So, it is something that we need to be very careful about. The Labour Party has been the only party with a clear and unified voice on the need to legislate on behalf of the X case. And we stand ready to legislate now. I'm confident this will not be the 7th government to ignore the needs to act on the Supreme Court ruling on the X case. There is a government commitment to have a decision before the Dáil breaks up for Christmas, and there is a commitment to implement that decision early in the new year following the Oireachtas Health Committee report. I have no doubt that the report will stimulate an extremely interesting Dáil discussion next week, and I trust that following on that, the events in recent weeks, we will be able to have a thoughtful, considered debate on this sensitive issue that has divided Ireland for at least 3 decades. And for all these reasons, I believe that a vote to support this bill would not be appropriate at this time.